Today, we're going to go through the process of updating Survival Game Kit from version 1.81 to the 1.82 hotfix. And I'm going to be using the guide by Diffuse Studios. So if you go to diffusestudios.com, you can go to their patch notes for Survival Game Kit, and you'll see there a 1.82 hotfix section. And you can follow along with the video if you'd like to do that. Also, make sure you are on 1.81 currently. If you are on another version, you need to make sure you follow those guides for getting your version. If you're on 1.7 or something before, you need to get it to where you go through each of those till you're at the 1.81. If you're ahead of this, you don't need to watch this video. Watch one of the ones for upgrading from your version to the next. If you're doing the merged versions, I have a separate set of videos for that. And so if you're doing the ALS and the SGK, would that be Advanced Locomotion System? That will be a separate video because there's a few things you need to watch out for through that update process. And so I now do those in a separate video, so I'm not going back and forth. This will be just the general following the directions from Diffuse Studios for getting this to the next version. So let's go and get started. And to do this, let's go ahead first with an issue where there was server grid duplication. So you need to be inside of the server project. Make sure in the level you're seeing that it says 1.81. And then what we'll do is on the left-hand side here, you'll see Survival Game Kit. And what we want to do is search for Master Grid. So in the filters here, type Master Grid. Double click that. And you'll see here that it brings up where we left off last time if you did the update. At the bottom of the red section, client loads grids from the server. Now, what we need to do is add a node here. And last time in the update we did that, added that is valid. But we need to add a branch between this branch and the for each loop. So what we'll do is let's extend out the comment box. And then drag from the right of this branch, so that for each loop, drag that over so there's room for another branch, and then you can also drag that reroute pin right there. So from true, let's go ahead and drag to the right and type branch again. And what we're checking for is this server because we want to make sure that it's not doing it on the server. So right click, type is server. You'll see there is a function for that. I'm also going to just lower this down a hair so it goes below it. And then connect that Boolean to the branch condition. Now we don't want it to be from true because it would then do it if it is the server. We want to do it if it's not the server. So control click and drag that, or you can just unpin that and then drag false over to exec. And now it will do a check to make sure it is not a server before continuing. The next issue is there's an issue with holdables not attaching on save load. So to get here, we need to go to the master holdable. So first let's do a compile and then a save of this master grid so that it's all updated and saved. And then in the filter box, let's search for master holdable. The master hold. And in here, we need to create a new custom event. So we've got this new client connected bind. This is under event graph. This is the upper left of it. What I want to do is create a new custom event here between the event begin play and that new client connected bind. So right click and do custom event, and you'll see add custom event. What we want it to be called is server new client connected. And when you select it on the right where it says replicates, you need to put executes on the server. So run on server, and you'll see in the box here, it changes it to execute on server. Also tick the reliable box and then connect it so that it goes down to that multicast new client. So either one of these custom events will pretty much just run the same thing. Compile and then save it. Next, we're going to need to go to the survival game mode blueprint. So to find this, one way you could do it is you should be having this load. There's a survival game mode, but let's do a search in the filter here and type survival game, and you'll see survival game mode. Double click that, and you should be in the blueprints for it. Let's find exactly the right position for this. We need to be in the event graph. And what we're going to do is add code above this update resource collision. So we need to create a new pin. And to do that, go up here, click add pin on the sequence. And then we're going to drag down and search for get all actors of class. And the type that we want to do for that actor class is the BP master hold. And then you'll see BP master holdable there. We're going to do something kind of similar to what's above it. But what we first want to do is drag off of the exec and search for branch. And then let's get the conditions for that branch. First of all, we want to drag out from out actors. We want to get the length so that we know how many items are in this class. Drag off of that and do a greater than symbol. And you'll want to do integer greater than integer. And what you're doing is making sure it's greater than 0, because if there are none in there, then you don't want this to run. Go ahead and drag that up to the condition box. And now what we want to do is from this out actors, once again, drag out, and let's search for each loop. Hit enter there. I'm going to be putting it here. So let's go ahead and reroute. Double click on that line. And let's just make it so it looks nice around it. Connect true to the exec. And then you'll have your array. From here, we need to drag out from the loop body and type server new client connected. And so for each of the various master holdables here, it's going to run server new client connected, and then it's going to pass into it the array element. Go ahead and connect that to target, and that should complete it. So go ahead and hit compile, and then save. One thing you'll want to do after this is you'll want to go in and delete your save game and old save files, because that will cause issue, because this is happening and will affect the save game. So keep in mind, you might want to go through your project files, delete like that intermediate, and there's various files in here. So intermediate and saved. That'll pretty much make this do a fresh start next time you load it. And then that way you won't have old data in the save game. Okay, so now let's fix an issue where the player inventory component was bringing up a warning. So to begin with, we can go ahead and close the survival game mode, the master holdable. But it should have been compiled and saved. And let's do a search in the filter for player inventory, and you'll see that component there. In here, we're in the event graph. You probably will see here there's a lot of things. So what we can do on the left-hand side under search, let's search for client set fire. You'll see client set fire mode. Double click that. It'll take you right to where that box is. And what we're going to do is add an is valid check in here, because it was trying to update the fire mode at times when the HUD wasn't there for it to do it. So go and drag the HUD, and that event to the left will drag the update fire mode to the right. I'm going to drag off the exec pin and type is valid. Of course, do the one with the question mark. And then this inventory HUD, drag that up to the input object. And then I'm going to double click and just reroute this. And then I control click this. And if you hit Q, you'll notice it lines it up. Just a little trick that you can do. So now you have your fire mode here. That's connecting through still. But before it reaches this, it will make sure that it actually has a HUD and it's valid. So you won't receive an error anymore. Next, we're going to go through, make sure you compile and save that, by the way. We don't want that popping up later and causing any error messages that aren't valid. Next, we're going to be still in this player inventory component, but we're going to be adding a new custom event to this. So in this event graph, once this is completed saving, go ahead and scroll out, and we're going to go to a blank area and then create a new custom event. So I'm going to create it here just kind of below everything, just below the green right here. And right click, put custom event, and you'll see add custom event. The name, we're going to call this client update controller. And we wanted to, for the replicates, when you select it, put run on owning client, and then tick that reliable box. Go ahead and compile that. And then we want to add a input to this. So hit the plus there. And we're going to add a transform. So hit the plus, call it transform. And for the type, put transform. So now what we want to do is drag off a transform and put break transform. And we're taking the rotation out of that transform, and we're going to put it into a function called set control rotation. Now let's make sure you notice I don't have it here when I'm just dragging off of this. We need to get it from the controller. So to get that, we need to right click here and do get master character. Drag off of that and do get controller. And now when we drag off of this, we'll see set control rotation. That allows us to bring a rotation in there. And we can just kind of line some of this up, connect those pins, drag that rotation up, and now it's all connected. So it's using the master character, getting the controller, and then setting the control rotation. Next, we need to go to the load save game function in the player inventory component. So we're in the player inventory component, but we need to compile and save that. And then we need to go to the load save game. So you see on the upper left here, there's the search box. Go ahead and in that search box, search for load save game. Double click it. And you'll see where there's a section called set control rotation. To find this, the easiest way is just do a quick search, set control. And you'll see that there's a comment. You can double click that, and that should be set control rotation. So that's under the load save game. Click the comment. It'll take you right here. Now, after this is valid check, I'm going to move this to the left a little bit. And then I'm going to drag off of is valid. I'm going to do client update controller. That's that event we called, or we created. And it at this point hasn't been called anywhere. So it's just been an event that was created, never actually used. And then we want this transform that's being, pulled from the player save. I want to drag that and put it into transform. If you would like, you can clean this up a little bit. We'll move this down a hair. Drag that up. There we go. So now you see that that's been added. It's now going to update the client update controller. After this is valid check, go ahead and compile and save that. Now we're going to go working in the HUD a little bit. So there's an issue where the incorrect total amount count on load save game was being shown. And so in the showcase, we're going to do a search. And we need to search for the BP underscore inventory HUD. Double click that. And what we're looking for in the left-hand side is you'll see, we can do a search here, total ammo. So if you type total, you'll see total ammo /120. You need to select that on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, we need to go through and make a change here. So where it says bind, you need to click the drop down, hit plus, create binding. And then here, we are going to add some code. First, we have our total ammo count. It says 0. Let's go ahead and take a look here. Drag this out. So it's get total ammo text. We can rename that, I think, here at some point. But let's go ahead and start adding some blueprints to this. First, we want to get the player inventory component. And from this, we want to, and let me make sure, first of all, I want to make sure total ammo text. Yep. Just want to make sure that we were good. So from this player inventory component, drag off and let's do get held actor. And first of all, we want to do an is valid check. So drag off of this and do the first exec and do is valid. And the first thing we're going to check is this player inventory component. We want to make sure that that actually exists correct. And then next, we're going to do an is valid check on the held actor. So from is valid, go and drag off again. Do the one with the question mark. And drag that held actor over there. We can move this return node pretty far to the right for now. From held actor, now let's drag off and let's do a cast. We're going to cast to the BP master range weapon. And we want that to be connected to this is valid. So control click and drag that is valid to the right side of the cast. Connect the two. So connect the is valid to the cast. And then we're going to actually have some things go from is not valid. So this first is not valid. Let's drag off. Let's do a return node. We're going to add a return node to that. Put it a little more to the right, and then we'll do a little bit of rerouting here. Something like that. And we're going to double click somewhere below the second is not valid. So we have a pin there for rerouting. And we're going to connect and drag to that. So you have either one of these. If they are not valid, they're going to connect down. And then we're going to return. And let's figure out what we're going to return. So first of all, right click and do a search. And we're going to search for append. This is nice because you can create multiple lines of text or multiple pieces of text and add them together. The first one we're going to do is a /, an A, and then a 0 in B. We're going to add /0, and then we're going to drag off of the return value and do to text, and we're going to make it a string because this return node is looking for a string. So go ahead and connect that return value, and then it's going to return a /0 for the ammo count text. Well, let's say that those are valid. We're going to have to now go through and properly show that text. So let's go ahead and do that. So from between this return node, from the right side of the cast, let's drag off of that and let's do a get item total. Now this isn't showing because it's from a particular component. So to find this, we need to first get the player inventory component. So right click, do get player inventory component. And now drag off of that. Let's do get item total. You see there's a function there. To properly connect this, let's go ahead and control click and drag from the right side of the cast, and then we'll connect the two. Now we're getting the item total, but we need to figure out what the item is here. Get that. Let's go ahead and first of all, one thing so I don't miss it. See this cast failed here? Go and drag that down to that next return node. So it should look something like this. And that completes everything for that return node that we'll need. From this master range weapon, let's right click or drag off of that and search for get ammo item. Now, this isn't going to have the output that we're looking for. So we need to right click and then split the struct pin. And we want to get the name, so the ammo item row name. We're going to, first of all, I'm going to go from the right to the left now. I'm going to drag off the item. I'm going to make item inventory because then we'll easily be able to convert that to the ID. So ammo item row name. We're going to drag that down to the ID. You can see it puts a little converter box to get it from a name to a string. Let's go and drag this to the right just a hair since I didn't quite do it far enough. We'll put it there and drag it back. So now that completes up to this point of getting the item total for that row. And now let's output the total count. We need to first, let's do an append. Right click and do append. Remember that adds text together. And we're going to put a / for A. And then the total count, let's drag that down to B and it'll do a little converter box there. But that's going to put whatever the total count of that ammo is, it's going to put it after the /. Remember, if it wasn't valid, it put a 0. Because there was no ammo. There was no valid ammo. Here, it'll put the total count of that ammo. And then we want to convert this to a string. So drag out of that and do toText string. Put it there. And then drag it up to that return node. So that should complete this section. Let's go ahead and compile and save that. Now we can we're going to close the inventory HUD and let's close the player inventory component for now. Let's go ahead and in the search box, let's search for build preview. Open that build preview. And then we need to get to on the left-hand side where it's under my blueprint. We need to search for get overlapping and you'll see get overlapping actors. In the middle section, let's see, there's a section here called trace defined any actors that overlap the foundation mesh. We want to make a change in that section. And you see here the safe overlap check. Well, we want to right click and do selected mesh. So get selected mesh. And we want that to be the target. So selected mesh is the target. And then you can leave the class here blank. And then it goes to overlapping actors and it goes the exact same to there. Now we need to go to the get overlapping actors function here, and we need to scroll out a bit and get to the check if using grid, then allow foundation overlap. So that's the very lower right-hand side. We need to make some changes to this set of code here. So first of all, we have our target build part. Your build part info. And then we need to kind of rework these branches that are here after that and redo this build part info because this is a build type. So first of all, we're going to make this where it says break the build part info. I'm going to move this build type down here. I'm going to move it directly under the build part info for the break above it, and then drag the build part info to that instead. So it should look something like this. You want to keep that foundation there. So you got build part info is going into that second break as well. You can just leave this build type here sitting to the side, or you can delete it. It doesn't really matter. So then we have our first branch, which is going to a second branch, which then we don't need this other branch here. So go ahead and delete that. And then make it look something like this. I'm just going to delete that reroute node. Okay, so we've got only two branches now. We have the foundation doing a check. If it's false, it goes to this return node, and it says overlapping actor is true. So it should end up looking like this. So just make sure the branches each are coming from false, and that the grid required is the condition for the first branch. All right, now we're going to need to go in the build preview, which we're currently in. Event graph, we need to search on the left for set build type. Double click set build type. Make sure you compile and save before we move on with this. And then at the very end, you'll see that there's the set safe overlap and checks that are both the same description there. We're going to make some changes to this code here. So from the right of the branch that goes from true and false. So safe overlap check, that remains the same. Reset relative transformation, that's the same. Selected mesh, that remains the same. Get local bounds, we're going to change from there over. So one thing we can do is, you see this add relative location and safe overlap check, you can delete that. And then you see all of these minus and the divide box, you can delete that. I'm going to right click and recombine the struct pins so it just looks like min and max. And then from min, I'm going to break that. So drag off and do break vector. And what we're going to do is drag each of these. So from the X to the X, the Y to the Y, and the Z to the Z. So that takes care of the top section. If you want to shrink down your comment box, you're more than welcome to. Now let's kind of step through the bottom one. We have our safe overlap check, the reset relative transform, that's the same. Selected mesh, get local bounds. That's going to change a little bit. And so this is get component bounds. We want it to be a get local bounds. So go ahead and delete that. Drag off and let's do get local bounds. And then you have a min and a max. So go ahead and drag the max into that break vector. So here, there's the minuses that are the three minuses here. Let's go and delete those. I'm not going to be using those. And let's move the safe overlap check. We can move that a little bit to the left. And the set box extent. So keep that safe overlap check is going into target. But now we want X going to X, Y going to Y, and then Z, we want to change it before we do this. So let's go ahead and delete these reroute pins down here. We're not going to be using those. Z, we want to multiply. So type asterisk and do float times float. And we're going to make it half. So 0.5 will be what you're multiplying it by. and then drag that up into the Z. You move it to the right a little bit so it's about where you want it. And then from this, we're going to be, in a second, we're going to be dragging off from this right side of the multiply. But first we need to right click and do a get actor location. From that, we're going to break the vector. And then from the Z, go ahead and drag down and let's do a plus. So it'd be float plus float. I'm going to copy that because I want to do it one more time to the lower left of it. I'm going to drag the bottom of that plus to the end of the plus we just pasted. And I want the bottom to be 15. And then I want the value from this multiply that was to the left of it, I want that to go down to the top of that plus. It will end up looking like this. So that multiply is going down, going to the plus. It's adding 15 to it. It's then adding that to the Z. And then going to make a little bit more room because I think we're going to extend off of this some. One thing you can do where it says delta X location, right click on that and do recombine. That'll give us a little more of what we want. And now we're going to be making the vector that's going to feed into that delta location. So from X, we have our break. Let's go ahead and do a make vector. And then X goes to X, Y goes to Y, and then this plus, put that to Z. So that's the value we want to feed into Z, and then the return value goes to the delta location. And you can leave both of those boxes unchecked. I'm going to now shrink this up to where it fits for the comment box, and it should end up looking like that. Go ahead and compile, and then save that. Now we need to go to collision. So on the left-hand side, search for collision. You'll see a function for collision. And what we're searching for is there overlapping with other actors? So it'll be just the first comment box from the left-hand side. Go ahead and zoom in a little bit. You can see this return node. What we want to do is, right now it says disable hide. Change that to disable. And then compile that. Now we need to go to the left-hand side where it says create and search for create foundation grid. We're going to make some changes here. Where it needs to be, though, is in the section that says check any overlapping actors. You can see that here. I'm going to zoom out right towards the middle. You got your box collision left. And we're going to make some changes after that first loop. So we're going to need some more room here to do this, though. So I'm going to drag this comment box out, and I'm going to highlight all of the two right ones here. I'm going to move those over. And then we'll move them back once we know exactly how much room we need. Okay, so from this first loop with break, we want to drag off of that, and this is all going to be changing for the most part. I'm just going to move it to the right a little bit, and then we'll rework it as we go. So from that loop body, do a cast. So we want to cast to master build part. So make sure it's the master build part. For the object, we want that to be the array element. Go and drag that into object. From here, we are going to be dragging off, and well, we have a branch here. We can go ahead and keep this branch that's to the right of it, but the condition is going to change. We're not just basing it off of an is valid check. We're actually going to be basing it off of this master build part. So delete this is valid. And then from this branch, go and drag off and put get build part info. So we'll need some room between that and the branch. From that, we need to drag off and we need to break the build part info. And then we need to get the type. So this type, drag off and do an equals equals. And in the drop down, you want to choose foundation. As I said, I will need a decent amount of room here. So I'm going to move just this top section here over a little bit farther. And then that Boolean, let's drag that into branch. So if the build part type is a foundation, it's going to reach this. From here, we've got our return value L. And we have our return. So one is false and then one is true. You can leave that to the right of it. You can have that connecting and looping back. That's how we want it to be. This one also, you want that to kind of terminate. But we need to add one more branch between this because we need to do one more is valid check. So go ahead and I'm going to make a little more room here. Just this top one, let's go ahead and the set and then that reroute above it. I'm going to move those more to the right because we're going to do one more branch between this. So drag off of this reroute pin and do a branch. And let's set the conditions for this. So what we want to do first is we can leave this value here. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. Okay. And we need to do an is valid check based on this element to the left. So this array element from the break with loop, I'm going to drag that all the way over to the right. And I'm going to do an is valid check on that. Now, usually we do the one that is the question mark, but we're going to do the one that's the function this time because it's going to return a Boolean based on that. I'm going to reroute this around it so it's a little bit cleaner. So we're doing an is valid check. That is then going to be feeding to an and because we want to check if two things are valid. So you got your and then do a reroute node right before this is valid and drag off of that because we're going to be using that same feed and do a get class. And then from that return value, we're going to make sure it's not equal to something. So put not equals. And for the class type, hit the drop down, search for plot poll build part. You want to make sure that this does not equal a plot poll build part. Drag that to the and. Should end up looking about like that. And then that feeds that second condition. And one thing we want to do is we actually have that over a little bit. Okay. We're going to duplicate something. So you see where the set that goes off of the false of the first one, the first branch there, copy that, paste it below and run that false to the same value. It'll end up looking like this. So that pretty much completes that section. I'll just clean a little bit of this up. But you want the top part to look just like this. So now there's one more fix for this. So go ahead and compile and save. And we're going to go to the master range weapon. You can close the build preview for now. And then in the filters, search for master range weapon. Open up that blueprint. And then we want to go to the weapon trace. So under my blueprint to the left, search for weapon trace. And double click weapon trace. Zoom out. And we want to go right after the initial part of this. There's the first one that says get master grid actors. We're going to add some things between that and the play the weapon fire montage. So go ahead and make some extra room with comment box. Move the first comment box in the initial code to the left. And then from this set actors ignore, we're going to do an add. We're going to add an array. The array that we want to use is the ignore actor L. So right click and do get ignore actor L. Drag that into the add. Yep. And then for the bottom pin, we need to get the master character. So first we need to right click and do get player inventory component. From that, we're going to get the master character. Now, if we try to drag up this master character to the add, it's not compatible because the type of this variable here doesn't work with that. So we need to actually change this ignore actor L. We need to change the variable type here. Hit the drop down and let's search for actor, and you'll see the object type's actor. Select that, and we're going to change the variable type. Well, now it says, well, this is a different kind. So let's actually remove this add for now. And then drag off of the new ignore actor and put add. Enter. Now let's see if this master character will feed into there. And it does. So go ahead and connect these back up. Add. Line it up. And then drag the right-hand side over to the server play fire montage function. So it should end up looking something like this. I'm going to move these now to the right. And then I'm going to move those things that we had previously moved to the left back to the right. And I can shrink my comment box back up. So it should end up looking like this. Just remember, you had to change this to an actor array, and then it lets you feed it into the add. And it should work with no errors. Go ahead and compile that and then save it. And the final thing is an improvement. So to do this, what it's actually doing is improving the decal locations, for instance, like on melee weapons. So you can, let's go ahead and close this master range weapon. And we're going to open up a different one. We're going to open up the master weapon. So do a search for master weapon. You'll see BP master weapon. Open that up. And then in the red area, you have your multicast. So you have the multicast spawn hit emitter. We're going to be adding some additional things to this custom event. First thing we need to do is we need to add 2 vectors. So where it says variables, click there and to decal start for the name of the first one. For the drop down, choose a vector for the variable type. And then let's do a second one, and we'll call that decal direction. We have decal start and decal direction. We're going to then drag these out just to the right of that event. So we're going to do a set decal start, and we'll do a set decal direction. I'm going to connect those two together. But the pin for this, I'm going to drag that over to this event, and where it'll say add pin to node. See how it creates that for me? I'm going to do the exact same thing for the decal direction as well. And it adds it for me. What I'm going to do is control click and drag from the right side of that custom event to the right side of the decal direction, and then connect it to the left side of the decal start. That way, it actually executes those sets. So now you can see that is feeding those into those two values. But we need to now change what comes into here. So we have our multicast for the spawn hit emitter. There's some additional information that we need to do. We need to create a new variable called decal hit result. So on the lower left, hit plus for variable. And call that decal hit result. Don't have to put any spaces there. And the type needs to be a hit result. So hit the drop down for the variable type, put hit result. Go and compile that really quick. Let's create another variable. And this one is going to be called melee. And it's going to be a bool type. So variable type Boolean. So you have melee, and then you have decal hit result. Now we need to have these also feed into, so we got our initial one here, decal start. Go and drag that to the right a little bit. This decal hit result, let's do a set for that as well. I'm going to connect it in between, and then I'm going to drag it so that it adds it. Actually, we don't want it to add it. I'm going to have it so that hit result here connects and sets it. So we're setting the decal hit result to be the same as the hit result. And then we have our decal start that's being set, decal direction, and now we need to add this melee. So go ahead and drag off and do set melee. Connect that in between. And then drag that Boolean over so it adds the pin node there. There we go. Now you can see. Straighten this out. Control click and hit Q to fill it in. There we go. So now it is setting a Boolean based on a melee input. Compile that. And here in the event graph, go ahead and save it as well. We have the very right hand side, we have our is valid check. We have our spawn decal at location. We need to remove some things from here that don't need to be feeding in. So we have decal lifespan, decal fade distance to the target. Go ahead and select all of these. We need to delete these off the very end. So the decal lifespan, decal fade distance, the spawn decal, and the set fade screen size. Go ahead and hit delete there. And then you'll see some of these things, they're not really going anywhere. But let's go ahead and we need to create a custom event. So to do that, let's go to a blank area. Actually, we can go to the blank area right above it. I'm going to do right click and do custom event. We're going to add a custom event. We're going to call it range decal. From that, we're going to do an is valid check. Do the one with the question mark. And we need to get this decal hit result. So do a get decal hit result. We're going to break that so it shows all the values. And first what we'll do is from the physical material, we're going to do a get surface type. And then I'm going to get the list of the surface decals. So do get surface decals. Now this one isn't right, the first one. We don't want this function. So get surface decals. We want it under weapon settings. There you go. And this is a map of the various types. From that, we want to do a find. and drag that surface type it, connect that up. Okay, and this, the value, we're going to return that into the input box. So it's just making sure that it is valid. And I didn't mean to open Visual Studio, of course. I love that functionality. There we go. So now we'll do that is valid check. From the result of find, we want to drag off and we want to actually spawn a decal attached. You can have that connect to the is valid up here. Do a little bit of rerouting there to have it not go behind something. And then the impact point. So we have our impact point here. We want that to go to the location. That's connecting to the location. The hit component, you want that dragging up to the attached to component. The rotation, we need to get that from the impact normal. So where it says impact normal here, drag off of that and do rotation from X vector. And then drag that into rotation. For the location type, you want to make that keep world position. The lifespan, let's do a get decal lifespan. We're going to drag that up to the lifespan. And then for the decal size, go ahead and make that 10 by 10 by 10. And leave attach point name to none. Okay, so I'm just going to clean this up a hair so that it's not quite so messy. Okay, so now we don't have so many overlapping things. So at this point, it should look like this. You should have impact point, impact normal, physical material, hit component, all being used. And from the right of that spawn decal attached, we're going to drag off that and do another is valid with the question mark version. We're going to make sure that return value is valid before continuing on. If it is, then we're going to set fade screen size. Now it needs to be based off of this return value though. So you're not going to see it in the list unless you drag off of this return value and do set fade screen size. And then you connect that is valid to it. You can reroute back around that so you can see it easily. And then do a get decal fade distance. That's a preset variable. And we'll drag that up into the new fade screen size. Go ahead and compile and save that. Okay, so that was the range decal. Now we need to make a melee decal. So let's create another custom event. We're doing add custom event. Call this one melee decal. From this, we're going to do a line trace by channel. So drag off of that line trace by channel. And let's feed some information into this. First of all, let's get the player inventory component. So do get player inventory component. From that, we're going to get the master character. And then we're going to make an array from that. Make array. Go ahead and drag that into the actors to ignore. That way you don't put a decal on yourself. And now we need to get a few pieces for the start and end. So do get decal start and also get decal direction. Those are those ones we created earlier. We're going to add those together. So hit drag off of decal start, put plus, and then we're going to do a vector plus a vector and drag decal direction into the bottom pin. That will then go up to start. And then we're going to drag off of the right side of the plus, and we're going to do another plus, and we're going to do a vector plus a vector again. Now, this is getting a little tight, so I'm going to move this make array over a little bit. Goes right about there. And then I'm going to add from this plus, we need to get the decal direction again. So you can either click that, Control C and Control V it, or do another search for it, get decal direction. I am going to multiply this. So put an asterisk, and we will do a vector times a float. And the float, we want that to be pretty big. It is going to be 50,000. So 50,000. And we're going to put that into the add. So that will go into the bottom pin of the add we created earlier, and that will go to the end. So that'll be the direction that it tries to look for from beginning to end. Trace channel is visible. Trace complex is false. Actors to ignore is filled. None for draw debug. And then ignore self is checked. Now from this, the out hit, we need to break that. Now this is going to get pretty tight here because there's actually, we're going to be doing a couple of these on top of each other. So I'm going to move all of this up a ways, probably about that far. So we're breaking this. And the next thing we need to do is actually do a get of the decal hit result. And we're going to break that as well. You can see I got one right above the other. And what I'm checking is we're going to see if these equal each other. But first of all, we want to move these down because we need a branch going to come off of this trace. So go ahead and do a branch. First thing we're checking, is this a blocking hit? Go ahead and put that into that. So that's our first check. From the true of that, we're going to drag off and do another branch. And that's going to be based on whether or not the out hit and the decal hit result are the same. So what we need to do is from hit actor here, we need to do an equals equals. That equals another object. What we're checking against is the other hit actor. So if those are the same, it will return true. And then we will feed that up to that second branch. So it won't continue unless those are the same. Now, we need to go through and do an is valid check after this. So go ahead and drag off of true and do is valid, question mark version. And then let's do a get of surface decals. From that, we want to find something in that list. And what we want to find is the physical material of the thing we hit. So physical mat, we'll do a get surface type. If that is in the list, then we'll drag it up there. That means it is valid. So it'll continue on if it's an item that has a definition, I guess, set for it, is what it would be. And then this is going to be going into a spawn decal. So from is valid, do a spawn decal attached. Let's get some information we're going to feed into here. First of all, what it found, we're going to have that be the decal material. The decal size, let's set that to 10 by 10 again. 10, 10, and 10. Now the component we want to attach it to is this hit component of the top break. So go ahead and drag that up to attach to component. Leave attach point name to none. The location, we want that to be the impact point. And then the impact normal, we want to get some information for that to fill that rotation. So impact normal, drag off to rotation from X vector. Drag that into rotation. For this location type, change it to keep world position. And let's do a get of that decal lifespan again. And that'll be what we feed lifespan. Now this is pretty messy, but we can clean it up a little bit, but I don't know how much it'll actually clean up. So about something like that. Okay, so to the right of this, we need to do one more thing after the spawn decal attach. First, we need to make sure it's valid. Do the question mark version, drag that into the input, and then if it is, then we're going to continue and set that fade screen size again. So from this target, this return value, we'll do set fade screen size. Connect it to the is valid. You can reroute around that. And then do a get decal fade distance and put that into that fade screen size. Go ahead and compile and save that. And it should look roughly like this. Now, we need to go to, we're in the master weapon here. We need to go zoom out a little bit. You can move this down if you want it to be a little bit closer to the other one. But we need to go to the very end of this multicast spawn emitter. Remember, we had deleted all that code. And so we have the find here. We have the is valid check. But from this is valid, we want to do a branch. What we want to check, remember we'd created this melee Boolean. Drag that, make the condition melee. You can drag it out there and do a get and then connect it manually. If it's melee, we want to call that event we created called melee decal. If it is not melee, we want it to be a range decal. If you created more decal types than that, then you would have to do a little bit more complex checks to make that happen. You'll notice some of these other things, this isn't being used. You can delete that, and you can delete that, reroute pin, and that cleans that up nicely. So it should end up looking like this. And then we got one more thing we need to do, and that's in the master melee weapon, not the master weapon. So compile and save this. Let's go ahead and close it now. In the search, let's search for master melee weapon. I have it master weapon right here, and I can see the master melee weapon. And then we need to go to the give damage once, which I'm already at, but you could search for that on the left. Give damage once. See, there's only a couple functions in here. It'll take you to this screen. And then on the very right hand side, we need to add, you have your multicast spawn hit emitter, but we need to make that a little bit more complex. So drag that to the right. First thing I want to do is get layer inventory component. And then I want to get the master character. And from that, I want to get the controller. Yeah, so that's going to return my controller. And then I want to cast to that. I'm casting to the player controller. But I want to make this a pure cast. So right click and then convert to pure cast. I don't have to put it in there the same way. From that, I'm going to drag off and do a get control rotation. Looks like I'm going to have to move this a little bit farther to the right to make this all fit. So I'm going to move that hit result and the decal respawn hit emitter farther. So I've got get control rotation. From that, I need to drag off the return value and do a get rotation x vector. And that's returning a vector here. That is what I'm going to be feeding. So I guess I could, that's the longest part of it. I'm going to feed that into the decal direction. Now there's some additional information I'm going to need here. So let's go. We got hit result here. I'm going to highlight all these and kind of move them down a bit. And now we need to get the decal start. Also make sure you check melee here. This is the master melee weapon. And we added some things to this. Remember, these are values that we added earlier. Remember, we added start, we added direction, and we added melee. So that's why these are empty. It's because we hadn't told it what to fill into there. So once again, I'm going to get the player inventory component. I'm going to get the master character. So I'm going to copy those two. Control C and then Control V those over to the right. And then I'm going to do a get screen center. Drag that into the decal start. The decal start, decal direction is determined by this. It's melee. And then that is the hit result. Go ahead and compile and save that. And that completes. Let's go ahead and really quickly, let's do a quick play and just make sure all of this is working correctly. One thing you want to make sure you'll do is let's go to, in the level, you'll see here the survival game kit 1.8.1. Be sure to select the text where it says 1.8.1 and change that to 1.8.2, since that is the version that we are now currently on. We want to make sure that we have that information and it's easy for us to find what version we're currently on. So change that to 1.8.2, hit save, and now you should be good. First of all, let's fire some bullets. If you found this helpful, go ahead and make sure you like and subscribe this video. Also, I would encourage you to join our Discord server. It's a place where we all hang out and give a lot of support throughout the week. If you want to help purchase future assets that I can give tutorials on, make sure you join the Patreon. There's a number of different tiers that you can join, and also there's some roles that you can get from Discord and that. And make sure you check out the next video. This one was just for the survival game kit version. I'll be putting out the ALS and SGK versions here soon. And then I'll have the rest of the videos up to current that you can do after you've completed this one to get yourself to the current version that Diffuse Studio has released. I thank you very much for checking this out. Thank you for your support. You guys have been great, and I will catch you next time.